As far as financial aids department, Automagic. It happens. It's a click of a button. A lot easier than going through Ed Connect and manually going through, retrieving those files, storing the files, archive them. Tons easier. How to use it? If you look at the command line, it is all command line based stuff. We're in Linux, so this is what I'm going to show you, but there's also a Windows version of it, and there's other platforms as well, but it's nothing I cared about, so I didn't pay attention to it. But it's script based. It's basically just a one-line command to get files and another different command to send files. Pretty straightforward. So if you look at this TD client, I'm pointing to my screen, sorry. Look at the TD client. First part of it is just the network that we're using. Second part is using the user ID for us that, oh shoot, I can't remember the number again right now. But it's that specific number that they give you. The reset, to tell you the truth, it's been so long since I created this, I'm not sure what the heck that is, but it's needed. The receiving class, this is the command we're using for getting files. The receiving class is what's used to tell the application what file we want to get. Stuff like the CRDL, CRPN, CRCF, or SP, REME, OP file, things of that nature. That tells it, okay, go grab that and bring it here. That received statement on there, that's telling the system, telling TD client where it's going to put the file and what it's going to name that file. The $P dir, it's just a big long line in our system. And that process file, that's just the name of the file that we call it on our side. The append no, trying to think if we have anything that does appending now. I think we had it at one point. I don't think we do anymore. Basically, what that's going to do, let's see if there's a lot of different versions or iterations, days worth of a certain file. If you have that append set to yes, on your side, it's just going to keep on adding to the top of that file. So you have one file. By having that set to no, it's going to create us a copy for each file that's out there. It adds an extension to it. And that's where that auto extend, I believe that means how many digits it can go out. The uncomp is if it should be compressed or not. In our world, we don't need it compressed because we want to be able to utilize it as a text file right away. Down here is just the logging. The first line is just any output that comes out of TD client is going to go to access log. And that second line, that's any errors that this command line creates. So if it fails, if it has interruption, anything goes wrong, it should spew out to that .er file. And then within my script, I have it set to look for the existence of that file. If that file exists, it'll send myself and our end users an email. Then from that point, we know something went wrong. Hopefully, based on that error file, we have an idea of what the problem is when we start digging into it. So along with that, we have additional stuff that we do with the script. So we retrieve the reports and route to the appropriate person. Everything within TD client is, at least the way we use it, there might be a different way to do it, but everything that you use TD client for, you're going after a named class. Remember that? Receiving class, you go after a named class. So you're saying, I want this type of file. Same thing with reports is saying, I want this type of file, bring it over. I have a part of my script for retrieving files is go through and grab all the known reports to us. I grab them all, I put them in a report directory on our Linux system, and then I send an email to the appropriate financial aid person with a link to that report. And it's different based on the report, based on the needs of our department. I was going to look this up, but I kind of failed you guys. P message file, there is that's what I call it. That's what comes through. That's what I requested. It's basically the blurb that you get from SIG saying making announcements, things of that nature. I take that file, instead of creating a link and putting in a directory, I take the text of that, put it into an email, and send it off to our financial aid people so they get it right away, something they can read without having to go to a different server. And there's nothing that is sensitive in there. There's not any student information, school information, things of that nature. And then there's a lot of files that we have that are not needed. We don't use them for whatever reason, but it's a file that's known to us. So I go grab that file and I store it on our reports directory, just in case we ever need it sometime in the future. Along with that, we grab our FAFSA files, of course, that goes into a separate directory. Loan files, Pell files, that all comes in. Direct loan reconciliation. You ever looked at that? It's a messy file. It's got some header information and then some detail information above it. I have another script that parses that part, takes that detail information, loads that into our database, our Banner database, and then we have a Cognos report that interrogates that data, comparing it to accounts receivable data, and does a reconciliation report. I take that header information, throw that in an email, along with a link to that report, to that Cognos report, and send that off to our accounts receivable people and our financial people to do that reconciliation right away. By doing that, they have the content right there. They have a link to the detail that makes things a lot easier for them. Once we've gone through all of the files that are known to us, I go back to the system and look for anything, system being their system, look for anything that's a file out there that we do not know about. And who knows what it could be, some sort of new report or some one-off type thing. Whenever I see those files, I'll retrieve the file names and I will send that list of file names, receiving class files, to our financial aid department and to myself, saying, these are new files that are out there. What do you want to do with them? We're going to talk with financial aid, find out if it's something they need, who should go to, what format is it, if it's a text file, a CSV, however they want to receive that data. Over something they don't need, archive it, forget about it. Just make a 2-3 line change to the script, and that's done. Then, of course, all at the end of everything, we're doing error checking, making sure that our TD client command worked fine, making sure that anything else within the script didn't fail. TD client, I don't know if it's other cases like people's cases, but every once in a while it'll get kind of dumb and it'll lose its configuration files, its INI files. So I also have our script set up to look for that. So if it loses the INI files, it loses its mind. It errors out, it doesn't know what to do. So I have it set up, the script set up to look for those INI files before I run it. And if I don't find it, TD client always has a backup copy. So I'm taking that backup copy, putting it in the INI format, whatever. Makes lives a little bit easier. In the past, it would error out, we look and go, oh yeah, stupid thing, forgot about it, it's INI file, somehow lost it. And we have to go through, copy it over, rerun the scripts. Pain in the butt. We changed the script to do it automatically for itself. So it self-monitors itself and presses on. And you got it. What I would really do is I would look at the cost savings. I would look to see how much time and effort it takes you guys to go through the process. And even just start with FAFSA, because FAFSA is a big hitter. People understand money. So if you say it's taking us this much time to process our FAFSAs, it's making it so our students can't get into our school this much longer or whatever. That's dollars. That's something you could say, help us save this much money. Help us get these students into our school. I mean, that's sellable, especially as much time as it takes to go through that stuff. Sorry, TD client is kind of a hidden thing. If you go out to their website, it should have a link to it. And with a download, I think is for Ed Connect, there's also a download for TD client, and there's some documentation there also. I'm a Linux head. Christine said they're not sure on deciding for Linux or Windows. I'm a Linux head, Linux Unix, however you want to call it. I think that's just so much easier to work with. And I guess it really depends on where you guys are putting your files. If you're in Ed Connect, you're probably downloading to Windows, and then you have to do something with those files to get them into the system. It really depends on how that process goes. I think in the past, when we had, before TD client, we had to have the files transferred over. Yes, we had our financial aid department running an FTP program to move it from Windows to Linux and then doing processing there. I mean, if you have to do that now, you can eliminate that whole thing by going right to Linux, because now you're grabbing the file, you're putting it on the server that you need to use it with. Saves you time, energy. You don't have to go through the effort to transfer that file from your local PC over to your server. Automic, UC4, AppWorks, however you want to call it. We still call it AppWorks, which I think is maybe one generation old. Scripting tool, awesome stuff. Kind of like you find within Windows scheduling or cron within Linux or Unix, but this is a lot more powerful. Strongly recommend it. We use it for loan files, for FAFSAs, loan exit miles, or loan exit emails. Those are the three we talked about, but we use it for just a ton of other stuff. How can I do this? So bring this over here. We abuse the heck out of it. If we can put it in here, we put it in here. Some are things that are run at night, nightly things. Other stuff is stuff that's initiated by the end user. Other scripts are being called by other scripts. Huge. We live and breathe by it. Which, on the flip side, once you start living and breathing by automation and something goes wrong and that automation fails, you still need to have your backup plan. You need to have that paper documented. So in case something goes wrong, these guys can still get your job done. All right, so hit that guy. Loan files. We use it for both retrieving and sending. Remember that I think it's at one point within TD Client, we had that set to append files. I think it was with the loan files. We would take them and put them all smushed together in one file. We start getting some errors. I can't remember what the heck it was anymore. So we changed that, made it so we get one individual file per whatever on their servers. We put it in a separate directory and we go through this process. So getting prior years reports, getting current year reports, that's basically just going out and grabbing any of those known reports we are, bring them inside, letting our users know about them. The get SIG file for the loans, that's getting everything that is out there that's loan specific, put in that directory. Then we're going through that directory, skipping through that directory, hitting each single file, processing it, archiving it, and grabbing the next one. That the loan importing part of that, that's going out to the next file in that directory, grabbing it, rename it to something that's generic, and then running the next processes. The RER IMX report gather, that takes the output from that, saves it off to the side in an email or links to it in an email, and then delete file, cleans it up, and then it calls itself again. See, there's the C's that are on that area, that's constraints. So it's looking to see if there's actually a loan import. How does that work? It every time it calls the loan importing. After that, it looks to see if it has one of those generic files. If it doesn't, it passes through and stops processing. Just keeps on going through, chunks through. Once that's all done, we do our GeoBeal data to satisfy any requirements and things like that that happen. RZU cat is basically just a our version of a way to mark things from the RR post. Different categories to run, and then we run a post, email the end users the report link for the RRB post, and then take those emails from RERMIX and emails to the users. Looks something basically like this. Goes through each known file type that's out there. If it finds a file, like you see on the first line, it puts the date of the file it has. If it had multiple dates, you'd see multiple dates showing up below it. And then down below is a link to the reports for the end users. So we also send loan files. We're doing this manually forever and ever and ever. We finally convinced ourselves that we can do this. We can automate this. We can make these in our lives. It's just basically calling the jobs that our end user do, has the prompts within it. They can run it wide open, doing everything, or they can run it for just the undispersed records. That's what you see those C's for. That's that constraint checking to see what path it needs to run it for. If it's something that's just going to do just the dispersed, runs GLB data to shrink that population down, and then runs REREX one way versus the other, and then sends that file off. And then sits and waits for an hour. Waits there because that's like the normal processing time for them to return the file to us. Sits and waits, chills for an hour, and then runs that get. runs it. We don't have to worry about our end user having to wait to, oh gosh, did I send that? Did I do that? It does it automatically for them, runs that process, lets them know that they got a file back. Yeah, and everything's beautiful. Everything keeps on carrying on.
Jake, we've got a couple questions for you in the Q&A. Melissa Cook is asking, yeah, what is your delete file doing?
Oh, let me go back. I'm sorry. You got to hit me in the head. I don't pay attention. So we're skipping through that directory that has all of our loan files in it. For each file, I'm grabbing that file, renaming it to, I think it's something, would I have that on here? Loan import or something of that nature, pretty generic. And then I process, yeah, I would. Make it easier, show and tell. Oh shoot. Can't see it because it's in here. Well, where the heck is it? Oh. Now there it is. So it's using just a generic name. By doing that, we didn't have to change the call for the RER-IM to be a specific file name for the CRDLS or each one. I just renamed it generic. And then all that delete file is basically doing is deleting that file, getting it out of the way. So when I come back up to my second loop, I look for the next file in that process, bring it in there, process it, get it out of the way. Keep on going like that. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Do you allow non-IT users access to UC4? Yes, we do. If so, what level of access do they have? They can run stuff, they can modify things. They can change any parameters that might be on there. We normally, for each year, will make, you can see it in there. We have a different file for each calendar year. All that's doing, kind of all that's doing is just setting up the different prompts, making it easier for end users. So they can just come in here, look at 2023, submit and close, press on, easier for them. If they didn't have that, they could go through and just, depending on what's inside of it, they could go through and change those aid years, but just makes it easier for our people. And it's not that hard for us to do it. Melissa, you've never had an issue to where the file itself needs to be viewed before deleting it. I think I'm lost in your question. We do take the original files and we archive them in case we ever need to go back. I think that might actually be part of that loan importing script. To grab that, archive it off, rename it to that generic name, and then press on. I'm hoping that's answering what you want. Christine, will you be willing to share UC setup? Heck yes. I have my contact information in here somewhere. I have no problems sharing this stuff out at all. It's just going to cost you beer and donuts. More beer than anything else. Andy gets the donuts. I'll take the beer. I'll put it in the chat just in case. Did I answer the email? Or did I answer the question on keeping the file? If you need to look at it, does that make sense?
Yeah, Melissa confirmed. Yeah, you answered the question.
Okay. Melissa, you bet I can. All right. I think we're getting close on time. Loan files. Okay, so that's that. We talked about that guy. We talked about that guy. FAFSA. This was a cool one to figure out. So you guys know within the FAFSAs, each time a student touches their record, it creates a new iteration, new sequence of files. We used to just take all the files, process them. But if you do those out of sequence, process like number 4 versus instead of number 3, you end up with suspense records. Huge pain in the butt. So what we ended up doing is taking all the FAFSAs we're going to process for a day, smushing them all together, and then I have a script that runs through it that looks for the lowest sequence number or iteration of the FAFSAs that are out there. So process all the ones. It'll go through this whole process flow, process all those. Then I'll go back up to the top and go, okay, is there any 2s out there? Does all that, any 3s, keeps on rotating through, looking for each sequence of that. I think it goes on, I don't know if it goes on forever. I think it stops at one point and says, we're good enough. We'll just process anything that's, let's say 20 over. I'm not sure, I can't quite remember anymore. Makes things a lot easier. Our suspenses are down to very little now. If it is a suspense, it's because something's really buggered up. So a lot of what do we call it, constraints on here also. Let's look and see, we're creating another generic name for the importing of that information. So it's looking for the existence of that file. If that file doesn't exist, then it knows it's done for the day. Let's process everything that we processed. If it sees the existence of that file, it runs through it. The very end, this RTP lock record report, that will email report to our end users and kick the process all over again without getting any files from their servers. It just keeps on basically from here, from ISER file split down, keeps on going through that process. Lori, to confirm the ISER files are concatenated and then separated by ISER transaction number. Correct. Yeah, we put the whole darn thing all together, and then we just go through that transaction number, grabbing each one at a time. It was a funky script. I got it from somebody, I'm not sure, like 2 or 3 billion years ago. But it's some really scary stuff, fun to play with. Yeah, and I can, again, Christine, I can share that scripts with you. Just no criticizing or condemning. It might be a little funky. It probably has a lot of commented code, and who knows, I'll try to clean it up first though. Yeah, I think we talked about that. Just keeps on going, rinses and repeats. Sorry, pointing on myself. Loading exit emails. Connie might be able to share with everybody. You know what, to make things, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. If there's a best process, I'll have to talk to Caitlin to find out how to handle that, or it might be just send me an email and I'll shoot you what you need. Certain people might want certain things, other people might want other things. Pressing on, loan exit emails. Like remember I said, we go through the same process for each one. What I end up doing is taking, I guess call it the meat and potatoes for sending an email, and put that into a subscript. That's what you see right here, the loan exit graduates. That gets called every time, just with a different parameter to say, do this letter versus that letter. With the low enrollments part, we had to create a top cell to reduce that population. Well, we get plenty of time left to reduce that population down. We still have problems where we're sending low enrollment emails to students that are not in that condition, but they're one-offs. Before, it was pretty offending to students. Unfortunately, this has helped out a lot. So we run that RER exit, call our sub procedure, do the pop cell, do whatever letter we need to do selection to the letter. We do another pop cell, which is gathering the people we need for a text, and then run this rave check email. Basically what that's doing is sending a CSV to our financial aid department of all the people that we've sent an email to. And they take that and submit it to our texting solution, which is called Rave. That sends it out, letting students know that, by the way, you got an email, go look at it so you can figure what your next steps are. After that, we're just running through that RSU CAT again, which is marking things within our post. Doing any requirements or whatever we need to do, and then sends an email at the end back to our end users. Let them know that they're done with this process. Okay, I'm looking back at Q&As. Is there quality control process in place on financial aid side to ensure that only good data is being transmitted when generating this? No. Unless there's processes, I'm guessing there's processes on the financial aid side, on business end that's doing that they're ensuring that. But there's nothing from an automated standpoint that is interrogating those files, looking to see if it's good data or not. That's on the business side.